and welcome to Woodworking 101 TV. My name is Mark, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what tools do we need to get started in woodworking. Now, there are two common misconceptions in woodworking, when it comes to tools, that is. One is that you need a lot of tools to get started, and two is that you need large tools to get started. Now, while there will be some investment initially to make in tool purchases, it may not be as high as you first thought. First, let's talk about safety. Safety glasses. You want to protect your eyes. Now, with just a small investment of probably less than $1, you will have strong protection against any flying particles of wood or maybe a tool that was mishandled. I can't tell you how many times that I've had wood actually fly in my face just from making simple mistakes. So for less than $1, you'll have eye protection. Two, hearing protection. Now, a lot of people do not take hearing protection seriously, but the reality is that the tools make a lot of noises, and it may be the tools that you think are not the ones causing the harm that actually are. Believe it or not, the hammer is probably one of the biggest culprits in hearing loss. Not so much the consistent humdrum of a machine, but strong sounds like a hammer that make just a hard thump. It really put a lot of pressure on the eardrums. Okay. You might want to use gloves, you might want to not use gloves. The reality is that gloves are not going to protect you from cutting yourself, but they do come in handy when it comes to protecting your hands from splinters and things like that. But the reality is, in some applications you may not want to use gloves because it becomes hard to feel, you lose some of your dexterity. But that's up to you. Not an absolute necessity in my opinion. Now, one of the first things you do when doing a woodworking project is that you want to cut. You want to cut wood. Now, while I do have a table saw, and you can honestly buy a table saw for a pretty good price, especially if you go on Craigslist or somewhere like that where you can find people getting rid of their old tools, you can get a good price. But say maybe you don't want to put that much of an investment, maybe like $200 to buy a used one, you can start with something more simple. You can start with just a simple handsaw. In this case, I have just a small Ryobi tool. I actually, honestly, wouldn't use this for heavy cutting, but you could find, under $100, you could find a good circular saw at Home Depot or any hardware store, really, of good quality that can cut really well, as long as you buy the right blade. Another thing you can do is just buy a simple handsaw that is not powered or motorized, just good old elbow grease. Now, I bought this on Amazon for about a little over $20. Now, you can buy a high-grade one for, a lot of money. You can go well over $100 buying a really high-grade handsaw. But that's up to you. Point being is that you want to have something to cut with, and you can spend as little or as much as you want. Obviously, if you get into table saws and things of that nature, you'll get a much more accurate cut. But a simple circular saw or man-powered saw like this will do the trick, especially if you're just building something simple like a bookcase. Let's talk about measurements. Before you cut anything, you always want to measure and mark where you're going to cut. Combination square. These are really inexpensive. You can buy these that have the little levels on them, for really good accuracy, or you could just buy a simple one for about $6 or $7. It's just plastic that just really helps you to make good square lines in your pieces. Measuring tape. You can buy a decent measuring tape for probably about $5 or more. They have really expensive ones for $35, but this one, which I bought at a hardware store, was only about $7. Actually, I bought them in a pack of 2 for about $10, maybe even less than that. And it's a really good, it's a Stanley brand measuring tape. But you can buy pretty much whatever you want, but I recommend a good brand like Stanley. There are cheaper brands, but I found that they really don't last that long. You drop them once or twice, or you bend the tape a little and they're completely ruined. This one, for less than $5, has lasted me quite a bit. Okay, so now that you've measured and that you've cut, you're going to need tools to put things together with. Now there are many things that you can buy to put things together, like a biscuit joiner for biscuit joints, even a nail gun, to glue and nail something together. But if you're going to buy a nail gun, then you also have to have an air compressor, which can get pretty pricey. But with just a simple drill bit, and some screws, you can put something together. Now, whenever I build something, even if I'm just using a drill and nails, I like to use wood glue. Wood glue is actually probably in many cases stronger than the wood grain itself. And if you tear apart the wood, you'll probably rip the grain before you actually take apart the glue joint itself. Now, if you want to get, maybe a little bit more intricate, you want to invest a little bit more with your drill, you might be interested in buying a pocket hole jig. Now, they have different brands of pocket hole jigs. The one that I prefer is the Craig jig. Now, you are going to spend about $100 on this, but in all honesty, you ask anyone that owns a Craig jig, they'll tell you that it's well worth the money. Because just the flexibility that it gives you, to being able to put things together is unbelievable. And you want to hide your pocket screws when you put things together, obviously, but you don't really need this if you don't want to invest $100 in it. Really, the screws and the screw gun itself, for what you can buy used on Craigslist, or you can buy a brand new one for probably about $50 to $100, or if you want to buy a really pricey one, well into the $200 range, you can do that as well. But when I first started in woodworking, I tried to keep my budget to the bare minimum. I went on Craigslist and I looked around for different tools, and whatever I could find at a good price that was a decent quality, I bought, and I started with that. And then as my skills improved, I bought better tools, and and it was well worth it, because what point does it make to buy really expensive tools when you really don't know how to do that much with it? But you'll find that as you start learning, that you'll want to have better tools to just produce a better product. Now, something else that you're going to need when you're doing joinery, you might want to use some clamps. You could even just use glue and clamps to put things together, because once that glue dries, you're not going to take it apart. So you don't even have to use screws if you don't want to, or anything else. You could really just do a simple butt joint. Just put glue, put the wood together, clamp it together until the glue dries, and you have a perfect joint. Now, some people think that a butt joint is not that strong, but it really, honestly, it is pretty strong. But for me, myself, I like to have something more than just the glue. That's why I'll use screws, pocket screws, or nails sometimes if you want to get into that. Now, if you want to get even a little bit more advanced, you might want to purchase a router. Now, the nice thing about a router is that this is definitely one of those tools that you can find on Craigslist. Now, sometimes when you find older ones, like I have a used one right behind me on my little makeshift router table that I made. The older ones actually tend to be better quality, made of all metal, steel, and they're really old, but the motors are really good, and the bodies, because they're all metal, have lasted pretty much, I don't want to say forever, but a very long time. So you can find many routers on Craigslist, from local neighbors that they might be wanting to get rid of it for next to nothing. But if you want to buy a newer one, I bought this one for under $200. But like I said, this is a more advanced tool. Now, the nice thing about a router is that you can use it just for decorative purposes, like putting a nice decorative design on the nose of a countertop, for your kitchen table, for your dresser that you might have made. Or, depending on the bit, you could actually use the router for cutting. You can cut rabbets into the wood, and all kinds of things you can do with it. You can trim out things evenly. You can use it on a jig to make the same piece over and over and over if you buy the correct bit. And in future videos, we'll talk about using jigs and routers together to make the same piece over and over repetitively. And if you buy a router, you want to buy some router bits. But that's optional, in all honesty. But it is a nice tool to have, and like I said, you can find it on Craigslist, used ones, older ones, which are very good quality for next to nothing. Now, you've measured, you've cut, you got your safety on, you're going to get into finishing. Essential tool for finishing is an orbital sander. Now, you don't absolutely need an orbital sander, because the reality is that you can sand wood with just sandpaper and a block and your hand. But if you're like me and you really don't like doing that too much, you could invest in an orbital sander. Now, you can buy a Ryobi one at Home Depot, or maybe a skill brand one from Lowe's or any place like that for about $30, and they do a good job. But the thing is that they really only last about, I want to say, a year at the most, and you run into a lot of problems with it. But I did that when I first started, and and they work really well, in all honesty, but they don't last super long. This one is probably about middle of the road one. This one cost me about $80, brand new. But like I said, you don't have to buy an $80 one. You can buy a $30 one, and they work just as good as this one, or even better ones, but they just don't last that long. But those, in my opinion, are the essential hand tools, and maybe just obviously a cutting knife, box cutter in this case, and not essential for when you're beginning, but you can buy a small chisel set of 3 for about $11 or even less on Amazon, just to get started. Now, the investment can be as small or as large as you desire. What I would do is I would set a budget and try to stick within that budget, and I would say to myself, what tools do I need to just get started? Now, if I wanted to just cut things out, say, what do I need to just get started? If I wanted to take it to the bare minimum, even beyond this, I need something to cut, something to put things together, and obviously something to measure with. And then you can take it from there. Thank you for tuning in to Woodworking 101 TV. Stay tuned for more videos and tips for beginners and more advanced woodworkers. Please also don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/woodworking101tv. And also don't forget to subscribe to us below for more woodworking videos and tips. Until next time, take care and God bless you. Goodbye.